You never knew that this ordinary moment was the starting point of a sacred covenant the universe had quietly arranged long ago. A covenant that, if you look back, you will realize was never accidental. Every step you took, every breath you made, and even the kindness you wondered if it still held value in this age, all of it led you to the moment when destiny leaned gently toward you. And the instant your eyes met that stranger, an invisible current began to tremble between two souls, even though you did not notice. Even though you believed you were simply doing what felt right to your nature. The verse in Psalm 25.14 opened like a secret torn into the air. The Lord reveals His covenant to those who fear Him. You did not hear it with your ears, but your soul recognized it as an ancient signal. Your kindness touched the right person at the right moment, a moment the higher realm had long been waiting for. You did not see it because there was no calculation in you. You did not see that person as an opportunity. You did not see yourself as a benefactor. You simply opened your heart through an instinct that was raw and human. And that very instinct stirred something far greater. When that person walked closer, simple in appearance and breathing heavier than necessary, all you saw was someone carrying exhaustion on their shoulders. But what you did not see behind those calm eyes was a heart worn down by many years of disappointment. A heart that had witnessed too many false words, too many smiles traded like goods. In a world where everything has a price, they once believed there was no place left for purity. No one did good simply because it was good. You did not know who they were. They did not need you to know. Yet in that unknowing, that sacred unknowing, you created an impact they themselves could not have predicted. When you reached out, whether to give directions, to pick up something they dropped, or simply to remind them they were not abandoned in the river of life, you touched the last fragile part in them that longed to believe in humanity again. A small gesture, light as breath, yet weighty as a promise that goodness has never disappeared from this world. In that moment, you believed you were doing something ordinary, but in the space between the two of you, there was a strange silence. A silence not made of sound, but of awareness. They looked at you not long, not intensely, yet long enough to etch your image into their mind, as if an intuition whispered that they had stepped into an unexpected moment. And you simply kept walking, carrying the quiet presence of someone who lives truthfully, without performing, without strategy. The world stayed loud around you, but beneath the noise of engines, voices, and hurried lives, a gentle current followed you. A faint feeling that someone or something was watching, not to judge, but to affirm. You once doubted whether kindness still held meaning in this age. You once wondered if opening your heart was a form of weakness, and then that small moment you forgot almost immediately became the clearest answer to every doubt. You did not know that in their eyes, you were something rare. Not because you did anything grand, but because you never tried to be seen. You did not try to impress, did not try to create connection, did not try to speak more beautifully than needed. You appeared simple and sincere, as if that sincerity was your strength. In their world, a world where everyone wears a mask, your authenticity cut through the silence and made them pause within themselves, wondering what had touched them. Perhaps you do not realize it, but your presence carries a depth many people do not have. There is an energy that goes ahead of you, like a soft wave that shifts the air around you. A feeling that you arrive, not to take anything, not to prove anything. You arrive that way because that is how you live. That gentleness carries a weight that needs no display, and that stranger, though you do not know it, was moved by your effortless way of being. The moment of parting unfolded as simply as it began. A soft thank you, a nod, a step away. But inside that person, the one you did not know, a quiet earthquake was forming. They walked in another direction, yet turned their head many times, not to look at you, but to understand why their heartbeat shifted, because of someone who never tried to be remembered. And in that moment, between their restless thoughts and your gentle calm, a subtle shift took place, as if an invisible door opened, a door without sound, without light, yet holding more power than any prophecy. That moment signaled something simple and profound. The meeting did not end when the two of you walked away. It had only begun. And you, the one who has always wondered why you live kindly even when no one notices, you do not know that today, this small moment, awakened a thread of destiny the universe had held in reserve, waiting for the right time to give it to you. a gift that will not arrive as a normal opportunity, not through your effort, but through the act you gave without expecting anything in return. That is the moment the real journey begins, where your kindness becomes a mark the higher realm cannot overlook, and where that stranger, the person you thought was only a passing figure in your day, becomes the force that shifts the destiny you are about to enter. You do not see it yet, but it is coming closer than you think. You may think the story ended the moment you walked away, that the stranger returned to their usual rhythm, and you continued on your familiar path. But in a deeper reality, that very moment opened a line of light that no one but the universe could fully perceive. Because that encounter did not only stir something inside them, it awakened layers of memory buried after years of living in a world built on calculation. You did not know that behind that tired appearance was a heart nearly drained of faith, a heart that had tried to give and was hurt so deeply it no longer wanted to see humanity through the lens of hope. They had met too many faces whose smiles were thin veils for their desires, too many handshakes heavy with ambition, too many words crafted so carefully that they lost their soul. The only thing they had never encountered in their long path of power and status was exactly what you gave them in a few short seconds: a kindness with no purpose, a kindness with no trace of strategy, a kindness that did not question who they were. And because of that, they stood still for a long time. Even after you disappeared from sight, they remained immersed in that strange feeling. It was small, but it carried the force of a knock on the door of a soul they had locked long ago. A wave of memory returned. Not beautiful memories, but years of solitude, lived by someone who had too much yet lacked the one thing that mattered: the feeling of their humanity being seen. You did not know it, but they had endured a slow, spiritual exhaustion for many years. Crowded parties where no one truly looked at one another. Luxurious rooms so cold they felt breathless. Conversations full of words, but empty of truth. In that moment, the verse in Psalm 34.18 rose within them like unexpected warmth. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. They did not believe in sacred words anymore, but this one fell into their mind like a single drop of water on cracked earth. It was not much, but enough to remind them that perhaps they had not been completely abandoned. And you, the one who walked away quietly, became the living proof of that. You were not trying to do anything special, but your simplicity touched the most unusual part of them: a gentle sentence, a look without judgment, a presence that made them feel seen as a human being, not as a wallet or a passport to opportunity. That was something money had never offered them. They began to ask themselves, when was the last time they felt safe in front of a stranger? When was the last time someone spoke to them without a hidden intention? Amid the noise of the streets, they walked slowly, as if afraid to break the feeling they had just touched. They replayed every second in their mind, searching for the reason their heart trembled. And they realized something they had forgotten for too long. True kindness is never loud. It does not display itself. It does not promise. It does not demand attention. It simply appears. And because of that, it heals more than any beautiful words ever could. Meanwhile, you continued with your life. Yet inside you, a faint and unexplainable feeling emerged, not because you expected anything from them, but because your heart sensed a shift that your mind could not explain. You walked on, but the light from that moment lingered around you, soft like dust of sunlight sprinkled along your path. You did not know that this very lack of expectation was what made the higher realm recognize you more clearly than any grand action. There is a truth you have not yet realized. Souls walking on the edge between letting go and holding on do not need great help. They only need one small proof that the world still has a place for kindness. And you, in those few seconds, became that proof. They did not say it, you did not ask. But that imprint ran like a thin line of fire through the darkness they carried. They sat on a stone bench nearby, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the ground. No one knew that behind that simple coat was one of the most influential people you had ever unknowingly encountered. No one knew that their life could be changed completely by a small action, and they themselves did not expect that you, the person they thought they would forget after a few steps, would remain in their heart more deeply than anything they had received in years. In that moment, they felt something they had not dared to admit for a long time. They were being saved, not from the world, but from the part of themselves that had been fading. You did not give them advice, nor did you offer encouragement, but what you gave was stronger. You gave them a genuine look, a gesture without intention, a moment when they did not have to defend themselves. That made them ask a question they had not dared to ask. Do I still deserve to be seen as a human being? And that was when they knew they had to do something with this moment, not to repay you, not to reclaim their lost faith, but because they felt the universe pushing them, as if a door was opening behind them, a door that, if they did not step through now, they would lose the only thing keeping them from falling into the abyss of numbness. You did not see that. You were not there to hear their trembling breath. You did not hear their quiet whisper, "Thank you." But the universe heard, and in that silence, a new flow began to form, as if this story was never just the meeting of two people, but the beginning of a journey both needed, even if neither knew what awaited ahead. They stood up, their heart lighter, their mind brighter, and though they did not understand everything, they knew one thing for sure: they had not met you by accident, and you, though expecting nothing, are being prepared to step into a chapter where light always belongs to those who do not lose their true nature. That is how awakening begins, not with thunder, but with someone like you, someone who carries the kindness the world thought had disappeared. They have not left your story. They are simply finding the way back, guided by destiny. You still believe that the meeting dissolved into the flow of time, that it was only a small fragment of memory among countless other moments of life. But sometimes, the things you think are insignificant become the hidden lines that support the destiny you are walking toward. In the days that follow, your mind is not occupied with that moment, yet you carry a thin layer of light, as if something gentle is quietly walking behind you. You cannot explain it, but your soul clearly feels the shift in the air around you. It is light, but not vague. It has form and direction, like an underground stream guiding you to a place known only to the higher realm. In that foundation, an ancient whisper opens within you, not through sound, but through awareness. And the verse in Psalm 37.4 seems to brighten in your mind, like a soft note. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. You were not thinking about your desires in that moment, yet the verse touched you in a way you did not expect. It did not arrive to remind you. It arrived like a confirmation that the stillness in your heart is valid, that doing good without needing to be seen is the right direction, that something is growing from that very peace. You continue living your familiar rhythm: simple mornings, steady work, late afternoons watching the last sunlight fall across the streets. But deep within, there is a shift in color, as if the light from that moment has not faded. You start noticing things you once overlooked: the wind brushing through the trees, the sincerity in the smile of the vendor, the soft touch of sunlight on your wrist. These details do not change your life in obvious ways, yet they make you feel guided, held by an invisible hand. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the person you thought was only a passing figure is experiencing a quiet inner tremor. They think of you more than they want to admit. A stranger who appeared in an unexpected moment, who said little and asked nothing, yet stirred their heart in a way no one has in many years. They search for logic in what feels illogical, but their mind cannot explain the feeling that lingers. The more they try to push it away, the stronger it returns. Not because you are extraordinary on the surface, but because you carry something they lost: a kindness without conditions. Sitting in a quiet room with high glass walls, they look down at the stream of cars, but feel no attachment to any of it. They think about only one thing: why did a few seconds with you make them feel saved? Why did your presence make them feel less lonely in a world full of noise, yet lacking truth? They have wealth, power, the respect of society, but none of it has ever given them what you offered with a single unjudging look: peace. You do not know this, but in their eyes, you are not ordinary. You are someone they feel they must meet again, not to repay you, not to balance anything, but because they believe, even though they have never believed this about anyone, that you are the missing piece they need to move forward. You are proof that the world still has a place for honesty, and that is what they lost long ago. As for you, in the quiet days that follow, you begin to sense an invisible movement approaching. Not worry, not joy, but a deep kind of foresight, as if your soul hears footsteps from far away. You do not know that the other person is preparing to return to your life in a way far beyond expectation. You do not know that even when unseen, the gratitude they carry has already turned into action. a great action that may change the entire course of your life. And within all these movements, something delicate yet important appears. The quiet opening of your heart toward your own life. You begin to believe, gently but surely, that your kindness does not sink into meaninglessness. You no longer wonder whether you are too soft. You simply continue living according to your nature. And that is what causes the larger door to begin opening. In this unfolding, you are invited to pause and feel what is rising within. If you are listening to this story and sense something inside you resonate, if you recognize small moments in your life that stirred something deep, you may share that feeling. Sometimes a single line from you can touch someone who needs hope. And if this journey speaks to you, you can walk with it for a while longer, not because of any invitation, but because your heart recognizes that it belongs to a similar current. As night falls, you stand by the window and watch the city lights like stars held within the earth. And in that quiet moment, you feel as if someone is thinking of you from a distant direction. No name, no face, yet clearly present. The feeling makes you breathe a little deeper, as if tonight the air is thicker, holding something you cannot yet name. You cannot know that the person you helped is also standing by another window. And in that silence, two souls, one carrying a faith being restored, the other carrying a natural kindness, begin moving toward each other along a path unseen yet precise enough to feel almost supernatural. What you believe has ended is only beginning, and the next part of the journey, though unseen, is already flowing into your life like rising water, gentle yet unstoppable. If you listen closely, you will realize your life is changing from the very point you thought was small. Because in the journey of those who are chosen, every small moment can become a signal of a door opening wide, and that door is waiting for you to step through. You did not know that this moment had triggered a quiet yet powerful shift inside them. When your figure finally disappeared from the crowded street, they remained still for a while, as if moving too soon would cause the warmth you left behind to vanish. They walked toward their car like someone stepping out of a dream, afraid to open their eyes in case the afterglow disappeared. Thoughts that once weighed heavily on them suddenly grew light, like a mist that could finally drift away. As night falls, you stand by the window and watch the city lights like stars held within the earth. And in that quiet moment, you feel as if someone is thinking of you from a distant direction. No name, no face, yet clearly present. The feeling makes you breathe a little deeper, as if tonight the air is thicker, holding something you cannot yet name. They opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat, yet they did not start the engine. Their hand resting on the steering wheel trembled slightly, not from cold, but from an awareness rising from the deepest part of their soul. No one knew it, but their heart was recreating a kind of light they believed had died long ago. They closed their eyes, and the verse seemed to be written across their eyelids in a soft glow. The truth was, they had lived too long in the darkness of emotional exhaustion. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of losing faith. Faith in people, faith in goodness, faith in small moments the world can still offer when we expect nothing. The light you placed inside them was not bright or overwhelming, but it had the color of real life, a light gentle enough to make them want to look at themselves again, an awareness that made them pause, stare into the space ahead, and ask themselves, what just happened? Why did a stranger, you, with only a small gesture, cause their heart to flare in such an unusual way? That question pulled them into a deep quietness, and in that stillness, a Bible verse they faintly remembered from childhood echoed in their mind like a bell calling them back. Psalm 18.28, "The Lord lights my lamp." Your gentle departure was what made them trust you more than anyone they had ever met. You were not curious. You did not ask too much. You did not show hunger for connection. You appeared, offered what needed to be offered, then left like a breeze. That freedom made them realize you wanted nothing from them, and for someone who had spent their life being viewed as a treasure chest for others, that was precious in a way that felt almost sacred. They leaned their head back against the seat and breathed deeply, and for the first time in many months, their heart did not feel completely empty. They looked up at the sky through the windshield, where the last sunlight was dissolving into a soft orange. The color reminded them of childhood, of evenings spent on rooftops watching the sun fall beyond the horizon, believing that life surely had something beautiful for them. But adulthood, filled with silent battles, cold handshakes, and decisions no one ever taught them how to endure, had taken that belief away. You are stepping into a new chapter of your life, one that the higher realm has already opened. waiting for the right moment to bring you in. And that moment is much closer than you think. That encounter did not end with kindness. It became the hinge of a destiny now turning, quietly, yet irreversibly. And you had no idea that inside that parked car, a soul was awakening. You walked along your familiar street, blending into the busy flow of people, carrying your quiet peace, unaware that someone behind you was holding on to your warmth to keep from sinking back into despair. You thought that day was just another day, yet a line of light had already attached itself to the path of your life, pulling you closer to where you were meant to go but never knew how to reach. That calm stayed with you throughout the evening. Even in the most mundane actions like washing your hands, pouring a glass of water, or opening a window, you felt a tenderness surrounding you. Though you could not explain it, you knew you were being guided by an invisible thread you could not cut and did not want to. You knew that the encounter, small as it seemed, had left a mark you could not ignore. In that moment, you kept walking, but something inside you began to shift as well. The last light of the day fell on your shoulder and made you pause, as if a warm breeze had crossed your chest. You did not know why, but you sensed that something had been acknowledged, not by the world, but by a brighter force. A quiet recognition for those who live true to their nature when no one is watching. They started the engine, but did not drive away. Instead, they placed their hand over their chest, as if checking whether the feeling inside was real or an illusion. It was real. Strangely real. And in that instant, the verse from Psalm 18.28 repeated itself again, stronger, clearer, as if the sky itself was reminding them that light can be rekindled by the smallest spark. You stepped into your evening without knowing that somewhere else, a soul was being healed by the gentleness you carried. You did not know that your small gesture had become the lamp that lit up a heart grown cold from human betrayal. And you did not know that the person you met in such an ordinary moment was beginning to feel an undeniable pull, drawing them back toward you. Meanwhile, the stranger remained in their car for many more minutes. They opened their eyes, looked at the rearview mirror, and for the first time in a long time, their face did not look completely closed. Something was softer, brighter, younger. They wondered if a few seconds with you could really cause that. The thought made them laugh quietly, a real laugh, not forced. They knew the answer. And they knew they would not let this moment fade into oblivion. You rekindled their light without meaning to. But what you do not yet know is that this very light is beginning to shine back toward you. You, with a single small action, brought that memory back like an old mirror someone gently wiped clean. They sat there, watching the light fall across the glass, letting the old scent of hope rise once more. Not a grand hope, but the hope that humans can still be genuine with each other, that the world is not all faces using kindness as a tool, that they, though weary, can still be touched by goodness, as if reality itself was adjusting its breath to match yours. During those same days, a pattern began to appear with a consistency too steady to ignore. The number 222. At first, you saw it on a receipt for something small. Then it showed up on the clock, when you glanced at it by chance. A passing license plate made you stop for a moment because of its repetition. You do not believe in coincidences just because they look nice. But the steady recurrence made you feel as if someone from the unseen world was calling your name gently. You never spent time exploring the meaning of such numbers. Yet this time your heart opened to receive it. There was a strange feeling, as though 222 was not simply a number, but a mark, a seal carrying something sacred. In the mystical theology you once heard in passing, 222 represents balance, the companionship of the higher realm, and the assurance that you are not standing alone at the crossroads of your life. And the truth is, this felt more and more accurate each day. Every time you saw that number, the air around you seemed clearer. You sensed a silent confirmation that something was coming closer, very close, not loudly, not with warning, but with a certainty strong enough to make you pause in the middle of a rushing crowd and ask yourself, why am I being reminded like this? Why now, when I am not asking for anything, not expecting anything? Am I receiving such gentle signs? Meanwhile, somewhere else, the person you offered unconditional kindness to was still haunted by that moment in ways even they could not explain. They sat in a high-glass office, a place that should radiate power, but instead only amplified their emptiness. People passing by wore polite smiles, but no hearts were open. They signed important documents with practiced hands, yet their mind held only one thought. What did you do that caused their heart to crack open? They had met thousands of people. People seeking connection, people wanting advantage, people trying to climb on their shoulders, people wanting to be seen beside them. But you wanted nothing. You came and went like a soft melody of an old, unnamed song. And that very quality pulled their heart toward you with a force they could not resist. They were not searching for salvation, yet they were touched by it through you, without demand, without strategy. That reminded them of the goodness they had lost in the battlefield of reputation. While sitting in their luxurious car, their hand resting on the soft leather without feeling any comfort, they suddenly remembered your eyes. Eyes without judgment, without curiosity, eyes that carried only presence. That memory made them grip the steering wheel tighter, as if their heart were trying to hold on to that feeling so it would not slip away. They had lived long enough to grow, used to people looking at them for value. But you made them feel they already had value, even without a title attached to their name. You did not know that in every hour they lived, the quiet memory of you seeped in like an underground stream, softening the dry ground within. And because of that shift, they began turning towards you with a new kind of energy, gratitude mixed with reverence. They did not know what to do next, but they knew one thing for certain. They could not let that moment vanish like all the things they had lost before. They could not let you remain only a stranger met on a dusty day. At the same time, you continued your simple life, yet your soul was expanding like a door slowly opening in a long dark room. You saw 222 a few more times, and each appearance brought a peace no words could offer. You began to wonder if someone besides you was also receiving signs like this, if someone had ever felt that numbers and spiritual signals were languages the universe used to speak to those it was guiding. If you are listening to this story and realize you too have seen 222, or any number that made you pause and wonder, perhaps you should not dismiss it. Perhaps it is a calling meant for you, just as it is for the seeker. If you feel that, you may share in a comment which number resonates most with you, because sometimes speaking the signs you have seen is how you open the door for more signs to appear. 222 appears again in your thoughts. This time it arrives as a deeper affirmation. You are not walking alone. You are being guided into a trajectory that both your soul and theirs are moving toward, even if by different paths. You walk slowly. You breathe peacefully, and in that ease, a new door is opening, gentle yet unmistakable. You did not know that this moment had triggered a quiet yet powerful shift inside them. When your figure finally disappeared from the crowded street, they remained still for a while, as if moving too soon would cause the warmth you left behind to vanish. They walked toward their car like someone stepping out of a dream, afraid to open their eyes in case the afterglow disappeared. Thoughts that once weighed heavily on them suddenly grew light, like a mist that could finally drift away. You did not know that in every hour they lived, the quiet memory of you seeped in like an underground stream, softening the dry ground within. And because of that shift, they began turning towards you with a new kind of energy, gratitude mixed with reverence. They did not know what to do next, but they knew one thing for certain. They could not let that moment vanish like all the things they had lost before. They could not let you remain only a stranger met on a dusty day. 222 appears again in your thoughts. This time it arrives as a deeper affirmation. You are not walking alone. You are being guided into a trajectory that both your soul and theirs are moving toward, even if by different paths. You walk slowly. You breathe peacefully, and in that ease, a new door is opening, gentle yet unmistakable. It was the face of someone who had not been touched by peace for far too long. In that space, they felt something you would never realize. Your energy had arrived long before your words did. You were not the person who entered a room and commanded attention with displayed confidence. You were not the one who made the world turn its head with outward power. What stayed with them was the way your heart spoke before you did. A presence that was not loud, yet made the air feel cleaner, easier to breathe. They thought of you, and suddenly noticed their breath growing softer, deeper, as if someone had opened a space in their lungs they had lost years ago. In that moment, a Bible verse they thought they had forgotten rose up, not from memory, but from the soul. John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. They whispered it inside themselves and felt their eyes sting. No one in that powerful office knew that its owner was having a moment of soft collapse, letting your light slip through a crack they had tried to seal for many years. You never intended to be that light. You were simply living your nature. But that was what made you the rarest kind of light. The light that does not try to shine, yet still illuminates. While they closed their eyes to feel your presence again, you were somewhere else, entirely. Standing by a window, watching the last light of the day fall over rooftops like thin ribbons. The sky carried a deep blue you rarely noticed. Yet today you paused longer. Something in the afternoon quieted you. Not nostalgia, not sadness, but an opening, gentle and familiar, like stepping into a silent room you forgot you once belonged to. Your world continues moving in its usual rhythm. Yet beneath the surface, new pieces have begun forming into place. And the other person, the one you helped without thinking, is taking slow but certain steps toward you. Not because they need anything from you, but because they know the flame you sparked has not gone out, and they cannot ignore what stirred their heart. You never intended to be that light. You were simply living your nature. But that was what made you the rarest kind of light. The light that does not try to shine, yet still illuminates. They stood and walked toward the window. The street below looked like a river of light, but what made them stop was the image of you in their mind. A blurry image yet more real than the faces they saw every day. And they wondered, how long had it been since they believed in the goodness of the world? How long since they felt the raw beauty of a soul without calculation? Then they admitted it to themselves. You made them want to become a better person. Meanwhile, you were feeling something strange as well. The street looked different today, not because the world had changed, but because you had. Your steps slowed, more natural, as if you were listening to a music only you could hear. You did not know that this change was the mark of a soul expanding, a soul awakening not through pain, but through presence. Suddenly, you placed your hand over your chest, not from pain, not from tension, but because a warm sensation spread, soft as sunlight touching water. You did not know what to call it, but you had entered the state all growing souls eventually reach. A wordless awareness that you are being guided onto a new path. Across the city, they felt something similar. Standing by the window, hand resting on the glass, imagining your eyes when you looked at someone without judgment, and they realized no one had ever looked at them that way. You did not admire them. You did not fear them. You did not worship their status. Your eyes said only one thing. You saw the human being, not the title. It made their throat tighten. Inside them, a healing had begun. Quiet, but stronger than any therapy or advice. Not because you healed them, but because your authenticity reminded them of their own, buried beneath the noise of power. You continued walking under the fading light of evening, unaware that at the same moment, they were making a decision that would change the course of the story ahead. They could not let you disappear again, not to possess you, not to repay you, but because in every breath they took now, you were the first sign that their heart still had the ability to feel what was good. What they did not know is that you were beginning to feel a pull toward them too, a pull without shape, slowly forming from the honesty of two souls who never imagined they would cross paths. This current can no longer be reversed, and it is carrying both of you toward a place neither of you ever imagined. A place where the light begins to demand its own form. You did not know that while you were walking through a street washed in sunset light, the other person, a soul who once believed they had lost their way, was standing on a very different threshold. A threshold where, if seen with ordinary eyes, you would only notice a successful person leaning against a glass railing. But if seen with the eyes of the soul, you would see a heart trembling, because for the first time in a long while, it wanted to return to itself. In that high room, they looked down at the flow of traffic, but their mind was no longer tied to the chaos below. They heard only the soft echo of an awakening forming, an awakening you had stirred within them. You did not give them advice, did not offer lessons, did not say anything grand, but what you gave, a pure presence, made them stop in a life that had always pushed them to move, to hurry, to never pause. They found themselves facing a crossroads, not one of work or wealth, but of the soul. For years they believed they understood life. Everyone had a motive. Everyone wanted something from them. And then you came, wanting nothing. That shattered every theory they had lived by. They did not know how to handle such honesty, because it did not take the shape of negotiation. It took the shape of light. In that state, A verse from the Psalms they had heard as a child returned, gentle as wind, touching the surface of a lake. Psalm 46.1. God is our refuge and strength. The verse made them close their eyes. Not to pray by ritual, but to admit that perhaps, for the first time in many years, they had found a true refuge. Not in houses, not in achievements, but in the presence of someone who asked nothing of them. In that silence, they saw what they had avoided for so long. They had been standing at the edge of letting go. Not letting go of work or responsibility, but of the very reason they lived. Success piled high like mountains, yet their spirit had fallen lower than the ground. Their smile had become ritual. Their eyes had become glass. They no longer remembered the last time they laughed sincerely. And they no longer remembered the last time someone had seen the human being in them, not the power. You did what even the closest people in their life could not do. You saw them without knowing who they were. That unknowing, sacred in its innocence, became the thread that made them turn back to look at their life again. They looked at the private jet, the boardrooms, the profit charts, the calculated handshakes, and realized how long they had only been surviving in that world, not living for themselves. Meanwhile, you were walking home with a lightness, as if your heart had been washed by warm water. You did not know that the clarity in each breath you took was creating a resonance they could feel even from miles away. You could not see it, but between the two souls there was a thin thread of light forming. Not a bind, not a burden, but an invitation to step into a new phase of yourself. You stopped at a small roadside shop, ordered a warm drink, and sat down. The soft golden light fell across the old wooden table. You placed your hand on the surface and felt warmth rising from your own palm, not the warmth of the body, but the warmth of something opening within. You felt as if a part of your life you thought had fallen asleep was waking again, not through a call, but through sensation. A sensation that made you light without being fragile, steady without being rigid. You took a sip of water, and suddenly you sensed that somewhere someone was thinking of you. The feeling was not clear, but real enough that your shoulder grew warm, as if touched by a gentle hand. You did not know that at that exact moment, the other person was whispering in their mind a sentence they had never said to anyone. I must find the reason I was placed in this world. And strangely, your image stood at the center of that question. The change inside them grew clearer each day. They worked less. They reflected more. They chose silence instead of force. They examined relationships they had maintained out of obligation and saw that none of them truly nourished their soul. You were the first person who required no defense. They did not know where you came from, but their soul believed the encounter was not a passing coincidence, but a calling. You felt this in your own way. Morning sunlight looked different. Evening quiet no longer felt heavy. You did not know that the balance you felt was the new frequency your soul was rising into, preparing you for a second encounter. An encounter where this time, not only they would awaken, but you would be illuminated as well. Because a true spiritual journey is never one-sided. When you open your heart and help someone return to their light, you also step closer to your own. And in that unfolding, the second meeting, already written in the current of destiny, is moving towards you with every passing hour, a parade of synchronicity, a quiet rhythm preparing you for the next test and the next revelation. In the night, soft as mist, both souls, you and them, are walking toward each other on two paths that seem different. But the higher realm knows very well these paths are about to meet again. This time not by chance, but by design. You awakened them with kindness. And now they are preparing to awaken you with a transformation your life has never seen. You did not know that on that very night, while you sat quietly under the soft yellow glow of your room, on the other side of the city, a decision was forming, silent, but strong enough to shift an entire life. After days of letting your light seep into the cracks within them, they began to see the world with different eyes. And in that shifting, they realized they no longer wanted to stay still, no longer wanted to be dragged down by the shadow of doubt, no longer wanted to live inside the hard shell that power had forced them to wear. For the first time in many years, they felt the desire to move towards something or someone. They sat before the window, looking down at the glittering city, and saw each light like a soul breathing. But among thousands of lights, there was only one they wanted to return to, yours. A light that did not dazzle, did not demand, yet revived parts of them numbed by years of being treated as a resource rather than a human. In their quiet sigh, there was no exhaustion. It was a return. A return without a map, yet with direction. The verse in Psalm 121.8 rose in them as the final sign to step across the threshold. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, now and forevermore. The verse felt written in light across the window, urging them to trust that the path ahead was not one of risk, but of protection. And a deep part of them knew that the light you carried was part of that protection. Meanwhile, you were living days of quiet yet powerful intuition. You sensed you were being gently pushed toward a new direction, though you could not yet name it. Small signs kept appearing, no longer through numbers, but through feeling. The focus in your breath, the depth in the way people looked at you, the stillness in your heart as if someone unseen were shielding you. You noticed you were becoming more sensitive to the movements of the world. A bird's morning call made you pause. A soft breeze loosened your shoulders. You were entering a stage where your heart could hear what others missed, not because of luck, not because of effort, but because your soul was being prepared. One evening, returning home after a long day, you sensed something unusual in the sky, not with your eyes, but with your awareness, as if a veil had been pulled aside, revealing a movement you had never seen so clearly. You stood at your door, breathing gently, feeling a thin yet certain current sliding through your life, a current whispering, "Prepare." At the same time, they left their office without informing anyone. No bodyguards, no assistants, no schedule, only a soul being pulled by something too strong to ignore. They wanted to feel the world like an ordinary human, something they had forgotten how to do. They relaxed their shoulders, walked slowly through the night wind and the hum of cars, and suddenly felt they were moving toward the truest choice they had ever made. With every step, they thought of you, someone whose name they did not know, someone they did not know the story of. Yet the only person who made them feel they still had a soul, it did not frighten them. It calmed them so deeply, they had to stop, close their eyes, and allow their heart to admit what it had kept locked away. You were no longer a stranger. You were a sign. You did not know that on that night, they decided to seek you again in every way they could. Not with power, but with intuition. The very sense they had allowed to wither for years. A part of them whispered that if destiny wished it, it would open the door. And they believed that with more strength than ever before. And you, at that same moment, were sitting alone in an unusual quiet. A faint sensation made you lift your head, as if someone had just looked at you from far away. You saw no one, but your whole body received the signal. A kind of inner movement that made you place your hand on your chest. Your heartbeat was not fast, but deep, as if your heart had received a message your mind had not yet read. You felt the truth that you were about to enter a new light, the truth that the energy around you had changed its shape, and the truth that your next meeting with them was not a possibility, but a certainty. You took a slow breath to feel the transformation more clearly. It was not a vague intuition, it was recognition. And then, in the silence, your heart opened to one question. Am I ready? No voice answered. But the silence itself was the answer. Because on the journey of the soul, you are not always prepared by knowledge. Sometimes you are prepared by your own becoming. You are becoming the person the next meeting requires. Nothing more, nothing less. Across the city, they walked beneath the streetlights, feeling for the first time that they were walking not toward obligation, but toward what made them feel alive. They did not know that every step was taking them directly toward you, not by accident, but because destiny had been pulling the two lines closer each day. And when two souls move toward the same crossing point, the universe grows very quiet, as if it wants you to hear what is about to happen. The light you awakened in them is returning to find you. And this time, it is not only the light of healing, it is the light of transformation. A transformation powerful enough to rewrite the path of both lives. You can feel it, can't you? The vibration of a meeting that no longer belongs to the ordinary world, drawing near. You did not know that while you were walking slowly along the stone-paved street that morning, the other person, the soul you awakened without meaning to, was moving closer to a decision both of you had been guided toward for a long time. They had stepped away from luxurious rooms, from schedules packed to the minute, from meetings where everyone tried to appear important. Today, they carried only one certainty. They had to find you, not out of curiosity, but because their heart for the first time in many years, knew what it needed. The change inside them grew clearer each day. They worked less. They reflected more. They chose silence instead of force. They examined relationships they had maintained out of obligation and saw that none of them truly nourished their soul. You were the first person who required no defense. They did not know where you came from, but their soul believed the encounter was not a passing coincidence, but a calling. No matter how they tried to reason it, no matter how used they were to controlling every detail of their life, they could not explain why the presence of a stranger had revived a purpose buried under years of disappointment and hurt. You, on the other hand, were living a morning that seemed ordinary. Yet inside you, there was a feeling only those who are guided truly understand. A clear stillness, a kind of peace that made you hear your own heartbeat. You knew you were standing at the threshold of something important, but you were not tense. You simply felt your heart open wider than usual, as if preparing to receive what was coming. You sat on the familiar wooden chair at the small roadside shop. Dew still clung to the surface of the table. The city had not grown loud yet. You placed one hand over the other and felt your own warmth. A realization rose within you. You were no longer the person you were months ago. Something had grown inside you. Not in the direction of ambition, but in the direction of openness. You felt that openness, not as a place to receive blessings, but as a place to receive purpose. In that exact moment, they were walking down a street not far from where you sat. Their heartbeat slow, but deep, not supported by the safety of wealth, but by the freedom they felt when thinking of you. They wondered if you remembered them, if you sensed they were coming. But then they understood something. This meeting was not based on memory of the mind. It was based on the knowing of the soul, and your soul, they knew, had opened its door. When they turned the corner where the light fell sideways through the trees, you looked up, not because you saw them, but because you sensed movement in the air. As if someone had stepped into your field of energy, carrying a truth you recognized instantly, even without knowing its name. You were not waiting, you were not hoping, but your eyes settled in the direction your heart pointed. And then, in the middle of ordinary life, there was a moment when time paused. No music, no spotlight, only a deep silence, the kind that appears when two souls recognize each other before the mind can understand what is happening. They stopped at the edge of the sidewalk. You sat at the table by the window. No one spoke, yet an undeniable recognition passed between you. They looked at you with eyes no power, no status, no one in their world had ever drawn out of them. Eyes without defense, eyes full of gratitude. Eyes confessing that you were the sign they had prayed for in their weakest hours. You looked at them, not with surprise, but with the calm of someone who knew they had been guided here. There was no polite greeting, no awkwardness of a first meeting, only the feeling that the conversation between you had begun the moment you helped them and was resuming now. They stepped toward you slowly, as if afraid to break the moment. And when they stood before you with no armor, you saw clearly what their soul carried. Honesty. Not honesty in words, but honesty in presence. You felt their openness, even though they said nothing. You felt the vulnerability they had hidden for so long. And you felt that what they were giving you in that instant was not power, but trust. For a long time, they had not trusted anyone enough to stand inside their own woundedness. But with you, they allowed themselves to be seen. You took a soft breath, just enough for your heart to understand that this was real. Not a promise, not a dream, but the arrival of a new chapter, a chapter where the kindness you gave has returned, not as repayment, but as a doorway into destiny. They spoke a simple sentence, a sentence that opened the entire rest of the story. I found you, not to make you feel important, not to prove anything, but to admit that your light had pulled them out of a darkness you never saw. You looked at them and felt the truth they did not say. They were not only looking for you, they were looking for themselves through you. In that moment, time deepened, space stilled, and both souls knew this meeting was no longer like the first. The first was a sign. This was the crossing point of two journeys beginning to weave. You do not know where this meeting will lead, but you know one thing with absolute clarity. You are stepping into a chapter that only those who are chosen are guided to enter, and that chapter is unfolding now in the rhythm of both breaths. The moment they sat down across from you, all the noise of the city seemed to shrink, as if the world itself were making room for what was about to unfold. It was not confusion. It was not nervousness. It was the deep understanding that everything was falling into its rightful place. You looked at them, and in that shared gaze, both of you knew this meeting was not an accident the world had thrown your way. It was an appointment written long before, and today it had simply become real. They exhaled softly, as if they needed to release what had been rising inside their chest. They placed a hand on the table, not rushing to speak, not rushing to hide anything. They allowed silence to touch both of you first, because this silence was not emptiness. It was the space where two souls were aligning at a level deeper than any words could reach. When they finally spoke, their voice carried no authority, no distance, but sounded like the voice of someone returning from a very long journey. "I have lost so much faith in people," they said. "Until the day you appeared, I thought I had closed that door forever." You did not respond right away. You simply listened, as you always do, in the way that made them realize from the first moment that you were different. And in that listening, they felt no judgment, no analysis, no framework placed around them. All they felt was the presence you carried. They glanced down at the table for a second, then lifted their eyes again with a gaze free of armor. "I want you to understand this. The moment you helped me that day, it saved me. Not from pain, but from the quiet fading I had hidden for so many years." Inside their eyes, you saw a small light, a light you had unknowingly sparked. That light warmed your chest, as if your own heart had just been touched by something profoundly real. This was no longer a story about kindness. It had become a story about rebirth. You took a gentle breath, feeling the fullness of the moment. And then, without any intention except your heart's instinct, a verse rose within you as the final confirmation of everything happening. Psalm 91.4. "He will cover you with his wings," not for you to speak aloud, but for you to understand that this meeting was unfolding under the shelter of something greater than both of you. They sat up straighter, as though gathering all their courage for what they were about to say. "You did more than remind me that goodness still exists. You made me want to return to the person I lost. I want you to walk with me in this journey." You tightened your hands gently, not from pressure, but because what you heard did not feel like a request. It felt like an invitation, the continuation of a choice their soul had already made to no longer live the rest of their life in the shadows of exhaustion. You sensed that they were not asking you to step into their world. They were opening a space where both of you could walk into your truest selves. You responded slowly, with the steady peace of someone who has learned to move with the guidance of the heart. Inside their eyes, you saw a small light, a light you had unknowingly sparked. That light warmed your chest, as if your own heart had just been touched by something profoundly real. This was no longer a story about kindness. It had become a story about rebirth. You took a gentle breath, feeling the fullness of the moment. And then, without any intention except your heart's instinct, a verse rose within you as the final confirmation of everything happening. Psalm 91.4. "He will cover you with his wings," not for you to speak aloud, but for you to understand that this meeting was unfolding under the shelter of something greater than both of you. "I do not need you to change anything," they said. "I only need you to keep the light that made me want to return to the best part of myself. You did more than remind me that goodness still exists. You made me want to return to the person I lost. I want you to walk with me in this journey. I do not have much to give other than my honesty. But if that is what touched you, then I think I should step into the journey the universe is inviting me toward." They smiled, not the smile of a successful person, but the smile of a soul allowed to breathe again, a release filled with humanity. "I know this sounds strange, but since the day I met you, my choices, they have become clearer. The light has become clearer. I feel a guidance I thought had gone away forever." You offered no explanations. You simply looked at them with eyes soft yet deep, because you understood that feeling. You had experienced it within yourself, and now you were seeing it appear in someone you had helped, without intention, not as someone receiving power, but as a soul returning to its original truth. You gave me hope, and now I want to answer you with my truest self. You knew they were not speaking of material things, not of power, not of position. They were speaking of the rarest offering: trust, honesty, open-heartedness without defense. And then, as if to close the circle of this meeting, something happened that you did not expect, yet recognized the moment it arrived. The space around you grew so quiet you could hear your own breathing, as if the higher realm had placed a hand on both your shoulders, confirming that this meeting was not an ending, but a beginning. You looked at them. They looked at you. No more words were needed, because deep inside, you understood. The kindness you once doubted, the kindness you once feared was meaningless, had become the key that unlocked a new chapter in both lives. Not with thunder, but with the silence of two souls recognizing one another. You breathed softly, they breathed softly, and the story born from a single small gesture had become the proof that once light is lit, it will always find its way back to the one who sparked it. You have stepped through the doorway, and ahead lies the journey the universe has been waiting for you to take. Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.